Have you ever stopped to think that you are living in a unique moment in history? That what we are doing today is a continuation of something much greater, a mission that did not begin with us, but that is now entrusted to us. History did not begin with our generation. It began with Jesus. And as the author of Acts said, what he began, we are continuing. Jesus said, "You will do greater works than I have done." And that is what challenges us every day. Because we are not alone on this path. We are part of a movement that goes beyond time. And most importantly, we have been called to transform the world around us. But how can we do this? How can we continue the work of Jesus in a world so in need of answers, healing, and hope? The answer lies in 4 foundations that guide us. Focusing on Christ, prioritizing evangelism, proclaiming the good news with courage, and, above all, expecting miracles. Because it is through them that the Word becomes real. The gospel is the power of God. And, just as in the past, He wants to make us instruments of that power. Let us follow this call with the faith that, through us, more lives will be transformed, more miracles will happen, and more hearts will be touched. Because the mission continues, and it begins in each one of us. We are continuing the ministry of Jesus. We did not begin this work, we are continuing it. The writer of the book of Acts begins with a powerful statement. He says, "I am writing this book to record what Jesus began and to continue by documenting the acts of the apostles." It is not simply the book of Acts, but rather of the actions of the apostles. It is the record of what has been done by the Spirit-filled people of God. In Acts it says that in 2 years the context was changed. It began with 120 people, but day by day the Lord added people. Jesus told his followers in John 14 verse 12 that we would continue what he began and do even greater works. How will we do greater works? Because we are in greater numbers. Jesus reproduced himself in each of us, and if we are simple enough to just believe, we can do everything that Jesus did. My parents began the miracle ministry in a context of preparation. They did something very profound. They were young. They had already been to India as missionaries, but they had failed and returned full of questions. God orchestrated events to bring answers. However, they decided to read the 4 Gospels and the book of Acts as if they had never read them before. Believing that everything God said his disciples would do, they could do too. As my parents read the scriptures, they had revelations of Jesus. They saw Jesus, heard his words, felt his emotions, witnessed his authority, his compassion, and saw his love in action. As my parents discovered who Jesus was, they also discovered who they were. To continue the ministry of Jesus, we need to follow 4 foundations. 1. Focus on Christ. In Hebrews 1:1 it says, "God, who at sundry times and in divers manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son." When the Bible speaks of the last days, it is not about the end of time. The last days began when Jesus came out of the tomb. Everything changed. Therefore, we need to know the season in which we live. We do not live before the cross. We live in the era of truth of the miracles after the cross. In these last days, God spoke through the Son, the word of his power. Everything that is the word comes from who Jesus is, his power, authority, truth, and character. Jesus is the exact expression of who God is. He came and he himself, by himself, purified our sins and now speaks on our behalf. The prophets of the Old Testament spoke about him. Now God speaks to us through his Spirit, so focus on Jesus. Through Hebrews 12:1-2, we are encouraged to look steadfastly at Jesus. We do not look to the right or to the left. We do not worry about the past. We do not try to project every detail of the future. We just fix our gaze on Jesus. The devil does not want you to do this. He will throw distractions in front of you. But look steadfastly at Jesus. He is the author and finisher of our faith. He is the beginning and the end. He is everything between the beginning and the end. He is the promise and the fulfillment of the promise. Christ is everything. When we receive Him and His Spirit, we don't need anything else because we already have everything He has. The challenge is to believe this. The enemy tries to distract us with good things. He doesn't come to us with sin, because that's no longer a problem for us. He presents distractions even with holy things. For example, we think a lot about what our gift is. This may seem sincere, but why don't we decide to do what we know we need to do? When we make this decision, the gifts will be demonstrated through the power of God. The enemy likes to crawl and infiltrate places where he doesn't belong. If the enemy can't stop you from praying, he'll make you stay in your room praying all the time. Then you'll pray a lot, but you won't talk about Jesus to anyone. If the enemy cannot stop you from studying the Scriptures, he will make you obsessed with studying. If he cannot hinder us and make us sin, he will try to make us feel so perfect that we see people from the bottom up. I have learned to smell the enemy from a long distance, because he is very cunning. However, if we recognize him, we just have to resist and he will flee. We don't even need to rebuke him, we just have to resist. How do we resist him? Firm in the Word of God, the devil will flee. He doesn't have to, he has to obey. Focus on him so that we can continue the ministry of Jesus. Many times we focus on our faith on the Word, but our faith is in the God of the Word, in the one who spoke. The authority of God supports the Word. There are many people who have faith in their own faith, in their prayers, in their gifts and talents. This is pure religion. Our faith must be in the God who supports the Word, because it is He who watches over its fulfillment. 2. Prioritize evangelism. The Church's priority is the evangelization of the world. We are the hope of this world. Without the Church, the world is lost. It needs to be part of the heart of the Church. This is our mission. Oswald Jabe Smith is the author of the book Passion for Souls, and was a pastor in Toronto, Canada. When my parents were young, they visited his church. There were writings on the wall like, "Why does someone have to hear the gospel twice before everyone has had the opportunity to hear it once? Everyone must go or send a substitute. Everyone can participate in this work of evangelism." This impressed my parents, and a passion for souls began to ignite in their hearts. This became the focus of our ministry from the first days. Luke 4 verse 43 says that there must be other cities in your heart. God plants us in a place. However, He does not limit us to this one place. Look at the possibilities we have. Nothing is impossible for us. We have the Spirit, the message, and now we have technology. 3. Proclaim the gospel. Consistency in the message can produce stability in the church. At the end of the Gospel of Matthew, we see the Great Commission. In Matthew 28 verse 20, it teaches us that we must teach people to obey the Lord's commandments. I have challenged some pastors to preach what Jesus taught for a year. Would people be more sick or more healed? Would they have less or more faith? Would they be believing in more or less miracles? A church focused on evangelism is receptive. When your people are winning souls in different places, and these other people come to church, make sure your church is receptive. We plan each service in our church so that new converts or even non-converts understand the service being ministered. After all, new people don't know how things work. We need to teach the church to welcome new people. There are people who like to sit in the same chair in every service, but what if a new person comes and sits in the chair you like? Sing songs that talk about Jesus and His victory. It is important to explain what we do. For example, why do we bring offerings to the Lord? When people learn that they can participate in a great event, they participate. When we have the right attitudes about money, this is no mystery to new people. Invite a sinner and a new convert to your church, sit with him and observe the entire liturgy through his eyes. A church that evangelizes is receptive and welcoming. Jesus said that whoever comes to me, I will never cast out. We train our deacons to welcome people, because they are in the right place. It will not be easy, so we need to preach about what Jesus preached: love, forgiveness, and the value of each life. Jesus gives us the best. Good news, not threatening, frightening news. My father used to speak to young preachers, who often copied what the old preachers preached. My father stopped these young preachers and warned them. How can you preach the good news with a frown and a clenched fist? Preach with a smile. You are bringing good news. I was in China a few years ago, in a very hidden context. I was hidden in a room with 27 leaders for 21 days. In Chinese there is no translation for privacy. We could not leave. The law does not allow meetings of more than 8 people, so that group arrived strategically throughout the weeks. On the first day, I presented the gospel in the 4 events. I put 4 pieces of paper on the wall, went through the gospel and kept quoting, "The gospel is the power of God and brings salvation." There I emphasized the power of the gospel. Until one day, one of the interpreters had to leave to be with the group she was leading. However, there were 3 men she did not know. The government places spies everywhere. She thought about canceling the meeting, but she remembered what I said, that the gospel is power, so she did the same as I had done. She came back from the event very enthusiastic and told us, all 3 of those men accepted Jesus. We rejoice with her as she says, one of the men was deaf in one ear, and when he received Jesus, he was healed. The gospel is the power of God. Preach the gospel and believe what you say. For expect miracles. The gospel produces miracles. This is proof that the word is true. I was recently in the Dominican Republic of Congo. I was teaching people about God's promises about healing. I would pray and ask those who were healed to come up on the platform to publicly thank Jesus. One night, there was a woman and a young man, about 17 years old. The woman was carrying heavy chains with several padlocks and keys. That young man had been demon-possessed for 7 years, and the demons had conquered him. He became so strong that the only way to contain him was to tie him up with chains. Jesus said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to set the captives free." God did not create people for captivity. I knew nothing about those people. That young man was looking at me with a smile and hugged me tightly. He was completely free, even without touching him, without casting out any demons. I simply preached the gospel. So, let's continue the ministry of Jesus. This continues with people like us, so, I, focus on Christ. 2, prioritize evangelism. 3, proclaim the gospel. And 4, expect miracles. This is what Jesus did, and this is what we will do.